Hey everyone, welcome to another installment of Eclectrocasts. This is Jeff, and I'm here with Kees. Kees, how's it going on this fine October Sunday, right?
Yes, it's fall. I cleared a lot of leaves yesterday already.
Yeah, I was up at 8.
Busy.
Yeah, I was up at 8 this morning power washing my siding. So,
yeah, and you survived it.
Yeah, oh yeah, and it's chilly today. But we're here today with Jessica Anastasia, and she is a composer, a film scorer, an artist, a visual artist. She sketches, she draws, and she also writes poetry. I think she's got all of the art hat trick. Well, it's not even a hat trick. There's 4 things now, right?
Hey, Jessica.
Hi,
we're
thank you.
Really
that was so
happy to
kind.
have you here.
I'm very happy to be here as well.
Fantastic.
Great.
Jessica, we're going to chat for a while. We'll play some of your music. We'll talk to you about your music. You can say anything you want, and we will hopefully motivate a lot of listeners of our Eclectrocasts podcast to go check out your work as we have done. And Jessica, I've been a fan of your work for a number of years. I remember conversations probably 3 years ago between yourself and me, especially in regards to some of the sounds. And you inspired me to check out the East-West Composer Cloud, if you remember that.
Oh, yes, I do.
And I did that, and I still have my subscription 3 years later.
Oh my goodness, that's awesome.
And it's cost me over $1,000 in subscription fees, probably. But I did use, and I know you still use some of East-West sounds, but I did use a number of those things that you inspired me to check out on my Silence of the Second Voice album from early 2016. So.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Thank you for that.
And then Jeff, a couple of years ago, said to me, "You got to check her out. You got to check her out. It's really good." So I did.
Oh.
We're finally getting around to you. It takes us a while.
Oh, that's okay.
Jessica, to begin with, where can listeners find your music and your writing and some of the sketching that you do?
Well, listeners can find my music on both my website at jessicaanastasiaofficial.com, which I actually use the website creation wix.com to create. Just wanted to do a little shout out there because I've had that or I've used that website for a very long time. But anyway, so my website only has a certain playlist, but you could also go to SoundCloud, which is, www.soundcloud.com/JXAnastasiaX. So I basically just upload samples of full pieces due to, in my past, I've had issues with people stealing my music. So I don't actually upload the entire thing. And so that's where you can find my music.
Stealing your music for their own, you mean for their own use, like taking your ideas and making something themselves out of your music, or just to listen to?
They actually use some of my tracks as background music for beats and whatnot. Thankfully, some people actually told me about it. I don't know if they meant it to be like a collaborative thing, but I was not part of that collaboration.
Isn't that funny? Let's collaborate. I'll just use your stuff and maybe you'll hear it one day. Yeah,
exactly. So I actually am kind of happy that they did tell me that. It's like, okay, you're not allowed to do that. But so I also have sketches on my website and my Facebook page and on Instagram, though I think the majority of them are actually on my website. And I don't really upload my literature just because I'm afraid of people stealing things if it's not published.
Yeah. It's a very good point. It's, I think almost all of us in our Twitter friends have fallen victim to our tracks appearing on these download sites without any of our permissions being given,
Right.
So I think you made a wise choice there. So maybe we can begin talking a little bit about your writing, because you are are writing a suspense or a thriller called Hillcrest Manor. Yes?
Correct.
Yes.
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. You mean the literature aspect of it?
Yeah, sure. Let's begin there.
Well, all of it. How you came to get the idea and the literature aspect of it, and whether it's the screenplay or whether it's the music behind it and the images that you shared. All of it's very interesting.
Sure. So as for writing Hillcrest Manor, it's actually something based on a dream I had. I think my sophomore year in college. And immediately when I woke up, I was like, I have to write this down. And I thought of the title was actually the first thing that I thought of. It follows a young girl named Harlow and another young girl around age 3 or 4 named Elsie on their rapid journey of finding the truth about the orphanage of which they live in and where the children actually go when they've been adopted. It also tackles the concept of the lengths a parent will go through to save their child from dying, as well as how strong the bond between sisters, not by blood, can be. So I don't want to say too much because part of there's a twist in there. Actually, there's a couple of twists, but it's been a very fun thing to work on. It's taken me a very long time to complete it, but a lot of times I feel talking about it helps motivate me. But yeah, so a lot of my work, as you guys know, is connected in some way. So I do have the literature aspect of Hillcrest Manor, and I have about, I believe, 12 tracks.
Wow.
Specifically for Hillcrest Manor. And I also have some corresponding concept art, especially for how I see the characters.
Okay. So you're writing this as a book, right? Not as a film script.
Novel?
Yeah.
Right. I am writing it as a book. I'm not sure if I want to be kind of like an extended short story or a novel, but either way, I do hope for it to eventually become a screenplay.
Oh, cool.
And if nothing else, what you could do is when you finish the story, you could do an audiobook and have your music behind it, if nothing else.
Oh, that's a very good idea. I didn't even think of that.
Well, we do these things to our guests.
We do things to our guests.
Yeah, we give them these ideas. Heather from Great Britain, from Croydon, we wanted her to write a musical, which she, we still tease her a little bit with that. I'm sure she will have a giggle when she hears us say this.
Yeah.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah. So Jessica, Hillcrest Manor, it went before you described it just now. To me, I had this kind of Wuthering Heights sort of thing, because it evoked that sort of image in my mind. But it seems very, very relatable and not 19th century or anything like that.
Right.
What do you find that you can use these almost classical in a period sense, classical and almost gothic kind of elements, and bring it into today in your work that way? I mean, was that a consideration?
Honestly, I didn't really consider anything, which sounds possibly terrible. It was basically just based off of a dream I had. I think going forward, I will look into different types of writing and whatnot, such as you said, the Gothic literature. But at the moment, it's just a piece based on a dream.
It came to you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It chose you.
Right.
It could
Yes,
have chosen
it chose
anybody,
me.
but it knew you were the one. So that's good.
Exactly.
Good. Hey, why don't we listen to a little bit of Hillcrest Manor and get some music in there?
We actually opened with a piece, a short piece that is called Through the Trees. And sorry to interrupt, Jeff, but I just want everybody to know that the initial piece Through the Trees, and it gave also this feeling of wind-blown kind of trees and sort of almost like a feeling of difficulty to make out through the trees what is behind it. But why don't you take us to that piece, Jeff?
Yeah, well, there's another piece that Jessica did for Hillcrest Manor. It's the introduction, the title introduction. And why don't we listen to that now here on Eclectrocasts?
So can you talk a little bit in the introduction titles? Can you talk a little bit about your choices of instrumentation? You know, how do you go about choosing? Well, it seems like you have an affinity for some of the choir voices.
Yes.
And for strings, in a lot of your music, strings occur. Can you talk a little bit about your choice of instrumentation?
Absolutely. So as you said, I do like incorporating choirs. Once again, I do use the East-West sound libraries, and I find that they're absolutely perfect for anything that I write, actually.
Very high quality.
Yeah. Yes, super high quality. So yeah, it's a lot of strings, piano. I incorporate a specific theme on the piano that is actually a reoccurring theme throughout many of the pieces.
Yeah, that's a theme that I caught at about 140 into it.
Yes, when it gets like pretty quiet.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I absolutely love utilizing choirs and strings together, as well as the piano.
Yeah, to great effect, I have to say. It creates a very visual environment for listening. It's right.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I'm telling you, and Jessica, you could probably identify with this in case to a certain degree too. But once you get a melody or a theme going, and you get to just do like an exposition of it, like on a piano, very simply stated. That is like food and drink for a composer to expand on later on with different arrangements and different keys, different instruments, different tempos, and it's just like it's the equivalent of to me, it's the equivalent of a skydiver who just, kind of just let's go, and then this just falls. It's that thrill. Do you feel that too, Jessica? Once you can sink your teeth into a really beautiful theme, something that you can that you can really expand on and develop later on. It kind of inspires you in so many ways. Do you get that sense too?
I do, actually. Yeah. And I find that when you find a theme, it just makes it so much easier to write everything else around it.
Yeah.
So it's very exhilarating. I agree.
I have this more with not so much with a theme, but with sound. Like I find a sound and there's something in there, and I then tend to take that as a jump off point.
Yeah,
Right.
I can tell that from your work, Case. I can hear the joy that you feel taking a sound and kind of throwing it into different things and seeing where it takes
so
you.
find it
Right.
I find it interesting to hear from both of you sort of this idea of a thematic approach, to a composition, because that's kind of like a foreign experience to me, because I just don't have the background for that either, but I've really never really approached music from that point of view. So I should try that sometime. You're making me think here.
I think that's the only way I know how to do it in a lot of ways.
Yeah. Jessica, can you talk a little bit how you came to being an artist, to music and all your other art? When did this begin, and how did this develop for you?
Sure. Well, I've always been very interested in creative forms of expression. As for artwork, it started very early on. I even remember when my mother used to bring my brother and I to school on days that we would have off from our school, and she would drop me off at the art room, and my brother would go to, because they're both educators, they're retired now, but yeah. So my mother would bring my brother to the phys ed class. And then I would just be in the art room having fun with the rest of the students. So art was pretty early on. And then I would say writing literature and poetry came next. And then definitely music. I found in middle school, that is when I started to become very interested in film scores. I felt very unlike a lot of the other girls in my grade who were more interested in, like, say, Backstreet Boys or Spice Girls. Then there's me. I'm like, oh, Danny Elfman. So yeah, I think very early on I became interested in these different forms of expression. And even like the soundtrack that made me want to compose my own music was actually Edward Scissorhands.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so beautiful.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. So go ahead.
So we can talk about Danny Elfman because there are some Danny Elfman type themes going on in one of the pieces that you composed for percussion, but we'll get to that in a bit. But I'm curious as to, besides Danny Elfman, what and who are your kind of major influences in your music?
I would say, other than Danny Elfman, mainly his scores for Tim Burton films. I also enjoy Hans Zimmer, the Pirates of the Caribbean series, Inception, August Rush. I enjoy Klaus Baddelt's score for the first Pirates of the Caribbean film. Obviously John Williams, especially with the the Harry Potter series and Home Alone. And I've actually recently been very into the score for A Cure for Wellness by Benjamin Wallfish.
Not familiar.
Yeah, I think he's the only, I've only recently learned about his work through A Cure for Wellness.
I'll have to check that out.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Definitely.
Yeah. Besides
very
film
dark.
scoring, are there other influences that you had? Like, when you were growing up, what did you listen to on the radio? Things like that. What were you drawn toward? And maybe what aspect of that music caught your ear?
Right. Well, growing up, I definitely was not interested in popular music at all. I'm much more interested in it now. But yeah, growing up, it was really honestly just film scores. Yeah.
Wow. It's very unusual, huh, for a teenager to get, because like you said, your peers had no interest in that. So it puts you kind of outside of your peer group, which is for a teenager a very difficult thing.
Yes.
So were you more like an introverted, inward person in school?
I would agree with that. At least in middle school, I was more into sports, which is probably a surprise to some of the listeners. Even though I didn't really know the rules, especially in field hockey. But yeah, I suppose just growing up, it was I always kind of felt a little bit more on the outside, especially amongst my peers.
Do you think that comes through in your music at all, Jessica?
I think so, especially with my later work. I think there is definitely a great deal of darkness, and a lot of the titles tend to complement the pieces of work based on things that I was feeling, such as I remember one piece, I think it was from 2009. It said, "Not all dreams come true." I was a very positive person. But yeah, so I think a lot of, my personal experiences and whatnot do come out in my work. And it can be very therapeutic, actually.
Absolutely.
Yeah, certainly.
Yeah.
Certainly. So, but it also expresses itself, particularly in your drawings. A lot of your drawings are black and white and have, to me, an interesting play with light. It seems like light is so, and I also hear that in your music, even though it has dark sense to it, there is lightness in it as well. Can you that contrast is absolutely stunningly beautiful. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. Yeah, everything that I do creative wise does tend to be dark. But I, like you said, I do like to incorporate a sense of the opposite. I've always been very interested in combining dark with light, sad with happy. I always like to try and at least have some degree of a positive spin on the majority of my work. Though I don't know, like some of the things I do are, specifically just for fun. But I would say that there is a lot of heart that goes into my efforts. For sure.
Yeah, and I'm also not sure if this was intended, but at the piece that you sent us, which is called Mina teaser trailer music. I guess it is a Mina teaser, the music for the trailer. It is a piano piece, and at the very end, when you hit the last chord, there is this cute little note. Bling. And it just made me laugh.
Oh.
And it laugh in a good way.
Right.
It was such a happy little note there, sort of appended at the very end. And I would like everybody to, when we play it a little later, to listen to that, because it is a beautiful piano piece.
Thank you.
Where particularly on your right hand, where there is some lovely energy in your right hand in the piece, and then that last chord, and then that little note. So how did you come up with that?
So I actually wish I had a very insightful reason for that. However, it was actually a note that I did not realize was there in the finale file. And I obviously kept it because I was like, that's just, that ties it all, completely together. Right. And I just think it's a little funny that I did not intend for that note to be there. It just happened to be there. But that just means it's meant to be. Absolutely.
Those amazing happy accidents, right? Jeff, you never have that, right, Jeff?
Yes.
Happy accidents? I have them all the time. All the time. Yeah. Why don't we listen to that, and then we can kind of turn the conversation, Jessica, if it's okay with you, towards, your commissions and your writing for films and things like that, because Mina is part of a piece that was commissioned from the Netherlands.
Right.
And I actually,
why don't we'll listen. Oh, sorry. Go
no,
ahead.
and it's a piece that is made by a Dutch filmer. So I would think it would be called Mina.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, so let's hear a teaser from the. I don't know. Is the film called Mina, Jessica?
Yes, it is called Mina.
The film is called Mina. Okay, great. So this is a teaser from a film from Netherlands, and it's called Mina. We're here with Jessica Anastasia on Eclectrocasts.
I love this tune. I love it. I love that little note at the end.
Hopefully everybody paid attention to that, right? Go rewind the file and play it again.
Yes,
and
definitely.
And then carry on listening from this point. I'll give you a minute to do that. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Welcome back.
Wonderful.
Okay.
Yeah. How do these commissions come about, Jessica? I mean, I'm sure they all generate in different, or originate rather, in different ways, but I'm interested in how you put yourself out there as being somebody who is not only, competent, but available to do something like this. And how did these conversations start?
Well, this is a very good question. I have been very lucky, actually. For Mina, the director and writer, Paul, he actually found a piece I'd written 2 years ago on SoundCloud, and he reached out to me through my website. Nice. Yeah, and so he loved the theme, but I actually no longer had the full track or the original track with the background noises, or without the background noises added, because I got a new computer and I honestly didn't transfer everything because I wasn't sure if I would need everything. So I actually rewrote it in Finale, which ended up working perfectly for the teaser. He also, through his own efforts and uploading the teaser trailer on CineCrowd, he was able to raise enough money to go forward and completing the film, which is fantastic.
That's great. So your theme actually helped him get more interest.
I believe so.
Oh,
yes.
That is great.
Yeah. I am very excited for it too, because it for both of us, especially for him, it's a very important story about a woman who's being torn apart by a choice she has to make, whether to stay with her familiar life or go down a new road. And I like how religion and culture are a part of her difficult decision too. So I very much look forward to the entire, the complete short film. That the film kind of focuses around a married woman who is growing feelings for a coworker, and that obviously it goes against her religion and culture.
So it's that inner conflict, really. Yes.
Yes.
And
which has been around for
millennia.
More than centuries.
Yeah, definitely.
You never marry somebody outside your clan, or whatever.
Right.
So you've done other scores, right? So this one came about sort of like a filmmaker sought you out. Does the opposite happen? Do you seek out collaborations with filmmakers?
Yes, actually. So that was the first organic sort of, a filmmaker finding me, which that was really exciting, especially with him being in the Netherlands. As for the rest of my work, it's actually based on me reaching out to other people. For example, I know we don't have a track from this short film, but I reached out to a professor from Kutztown University, Michael Johnston. His biography on the school website said that he was a filmmaker. So I just sent him an email and I was like, let's see if this does anything. So upon meeting him and discussing his film, A Man Full of Trouble, we decided to move forward on me composing the teaser trailer and the score for it. And it was actually submitted to and accepted into many festivals. And
that's so cool.
And that was really cool. Yeah. So that, is an example of, me trying to put myself out there. And as I'm sure you guys can tell, I'm a little bit more introverted. So that definitely was, I wouldn't say stress inducing, but a little.
It's
courageous.
Yes,
Marketing our music is always the most difficult part, I think.
It really is. Yeah.
Yeah. Talking about your own art is daunting.
It is.
Sometimes.
Yes.
Other people are much better at talking about your art than you are yourself.
That's true.
No, it's very understandable. My wife's an artist, and, we have very few discussions about her work because she can't really say anything while she's doing it because she doesn't know yet.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's always afterward that you realize, so that's what I was doing. So you're talking about you're composing these things in what was the software that you use for that again?
So the software that I use is, I use the Composer Cloud by East West for the sound libraries. And if I notate the music, which to me is very different than reading music.
Right.
Yes. So if I notate the music, I use Finale.
Oh, okay.
Which is a really great software as well. And then if I were to play something on my electronic keyboard and record it into Audacity, I would use Audacity to edit the tracks and, trim down and just pick a certain section for a sample.
But do you when you score for a movie, do you just notate? So do you just basically write the music in the software, or do you first play the parts and then notate? What's your process?
So that is a very good question, and it's the answer is kind of funny. I'm definitely open to any suggestions for better software to write music for film, but for some reason my computer cannot play two audio
Yep.
outputs at the same
Bummer.
time. So actually what I've been, so what I've been doing is, at least for the past couple of film scores, I've been opening finale, notating the music, and then the director sends me like a YouTube link. So I open that on my cell phone and I try and like play the video and my finale file at the same time.
Oh, wow.
To try and line up the times and
That's
whatnot.
tough. That's not easy.
Yeah.
It's funny what comes out of limitations, be they, software or tools limitations, or even, being able to play limitations on, Kees and I are both guitar players primarily. And when we decided to record electronic music, okay, so I can't play, Rachmaninoff on the piano, but I can do other things. And, our own style comes out of our limitations and it's very
that's fantastic.
Can we just to kind of further along and maybe put closure to the film scoring part of our conversation? You are doing music for something called The Cycle. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. So The Cycle is actually, this kind of goes back into how, the commission came about. But it was a coworker who gave my business card to one of his friends, and his friend, Jesse Kirn, reached out to me through my website and asked me if I would be interested in composing the score to his film. And it's actually the first horror film score that I've composed. So I was, being one who writes dark music, I was very happy to give it a whirl. And it's just been a lot of fun. I've been able to use sound libraries that I haven't used before. And then being a person who doesn't watch horror films because they're too scary to me, it was very interesting to see the video without music. And then to be like, well, how can I make this scene scary? How can I make this realization like absolutely eerie? And it was just a lot of fun. I was able to use a lot of choirs, like ghost sounds for East West. And it was just, it was just a lot of fun and a really awesome opportunity.
Well, the human voice is probably the most capable in terms of width of expression, right? Or breadth, I should say. And many musical instruments are basically the ones that we are very attracted to. They are very close to the human voice, like a cello or, or saxophone.
Saxophone.
Yeah. They imitate the human voice with its under and overtones. So, so using choir sounds is a very smart choice, right? Because it allows for such a breadth of expression. Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah. Plus, there's nothing as chilling as a child choir.
Yes.
Soundtrack.
Oh my goodness.
Right. Add some glockenspiel over that.
A little vibraphone.
Yep.
A child's choir.
Yeah. I actually do use the East West Boys Choir for Hillcrest Manor.
Very smart.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's one of my favorite libraries.
Cool.
Well, let's listen to Cycle. I think it would be a good time to do that.
Okay, so another commission for Jessica Anastasia, a horror film called The Cycle. And here is a piece that she composed for that here on Eclectrocasts. So, Jessica, I know you'd mentioned you're a great admirer of composer Danny Elfman. A lot of listeners may know Danny Elfman's name from being the singer-songwriter from Oingo Boingo, new wave band in the 80s. But tell us what, and you've mentioned that, you know, his work on Tim Burton films has attracted you quite a bit. You know, what is it about the way he approaches things that really makes you have that kinship with him?
So, yes, I am definitely an admirer of Danny Elfman's work. I think it is a lot of his writing is dark but beautiful, and I really enjoy that combination. You know, once again, it's like the dark and the light. My best friend and I, Sarah Slater, who's also a very talented composer, we actually got to see him perform live in concert a few years ago for the PBS station of his music. I actually just listened to that before the podcast to help me get into the headspace. But yeah, I just knew from the moment I heard Ice Dance from Edward Scissorhands that I just loved his work. And I've, you know, as I even said before, I credit him as being the one to influence me to become a film scorer.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Have you ever reached out to him personally?
I have actually tried to reach out to him. It was after the concert in New York City, and I just wanted to share how much I loved his work and the concert and the impact that his work has made on my life. I don't know if the address that I found was a legitimate one. So I didn't hear anything back, which is absolutely fine because I know he has a busy schedule and whatnot. But once again, who knows if that address was accurate? I mean, definitely wasn't a personal one, but But yeah.
Well, keep trying. I bet you anything he would love to hear from you, especially, you know, you're being so intimately knowledgeable of his music. But also, you never know if he needs some kind of apprentice of some kind.
That would be amazing.
Not even an apprenticeship, but, you know, somebody even to engineer in his studio or to just hang around and just kind of soak up the vibe. And if you create a friendly relationship with him, and I'm sure, you know, somebody did that for him at one point, I'm sure, you know, at one time somebody did that for him.
Also, generally, people that are at the top of their field are actually very interested in people who are beginning because they generally want to pass on the baton, if you will, you know, and it is the people that are at the beginning of their career and in the middle that you want to avoid like heck. Because they don't want competition. They will experience you as competition.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, that makes sense.
So it's a good choice to try to, you know, reach out to him. And maybe he has an agent that sometimes people like that have an agent or people work for them that do all their PR and so on. And that might be a person to contact.
That's very true. I'll have to look into that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I like how you were willing to tackle this idea of writing music for horror. And you said that that's not a genre you watch. And I totally share that with you. I remember as a kid watching the Frankenstein movies in black and white, and I'm in my 60s. I'm still having nightmares from it.
I do. I watch horror movies a lot. I love them. I love them. Well, taking horror, not really horror, but that suspense and that kind of sense of otherness, I guess you could say. I'd like to move on to Eve of Winter, which is a piece that you composed. You sent us a little bit of it that has to do with, you know, the changing of seasons, coming of winter, things like that. Anybody who's ever paid attention to my music knows that winter is a very strong theme in my music, and
water,
and I feel that and water, and I feel that kinship with you. Tell us a little bit about how Eve of Winter came about, and what are some of the instruments that you feel capture that sense of pending cold, pending bleakness,
harbor.
but also
some harbor,
maybe some light as well.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So Eve of Winter was actually written almost a decade ago, and it's still one of my favorites. I am thinking about perhaps writing it with the Composer Cloud sound libraries. But yeah, I also absolutely love winter, and I want to portray my love of it through music. To me, it can also be a sad time too, just with the cold and seasonal depression. I think the instruments that capture the atmosphere best would be the piano, the Glock, and the vibraphone. The violin part is, very beautiful too, but to me, that's more secondary. But I just really want to write a piece that combines, beauty and sadness all in one. And it even ends on an uplifting note.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. So,
but it has to me, it has a tenderness to it. It's mostly piano and violin, right? If I'm not mistaken. And the underlying feeling I get from it is just tenderness. Sort of a tender, loving feeling. Is this like a feeling towards the season, or is this a desire that you express?
I think it's just the ultimate feeling that I personally get when winter comes around, especially with, the holidays coming up. Like, that's like the warmer kind of tones.
Yeah.
In an otherwise generally kind of bleak season.
Shorter days, right?
Yeah, not a lot of sunshine.
Yeah. Yeah, you live somewhere in Pennsylvania that it gets pretty cold there. I mean, you see it gets cold in New York, and I'm in Rhode Island. I have a little bit of the moderation of the ocean, but
the ocean acts as an insulator.
But deep in Pennsylvania, it gets cold.
It definitely can. Yes. But I do prefer that.
Yeah, you
summer.
do? Yeah.
Yes, definitely. Oh my
I love
goodness.
it. Somebody else who doesn't really like heat and humidity, probably.
Yes. Oh my goodness.
I wasn't born for that.
Well, when I came to the United States in 1983, and my first 2 summers, I just sat in a chair. I grew up in the Netherlands, and it's a moderate climate, and I had really never experienced anything in the 90s, around 30 degrees Celsius, but then so humid. And it is not so much the heat, although, 90 degrees is hot, but the humidity is just stifling. It is absolutely stifling. And now I'm fine with it. I've learned to live with it, and I learned to pace myself. But I found the initial summers here in the United States, I found them like imprisoning. I was like stuck in a chair sweating the whole day through.
Yeah.
And Jeff has never been able to escape that.
It can be.
Escape.
You're still stifled by the summer.
Well, I am, but I've learned to use air conditioning, and
yes,
and in the summertime, the work that I do for a living puts me from a climate-controlled house into a climate-controlled car into a climate-controlled building, and then back. So I really don't have to deal with it much, but
it's the little spurts in between.
Yeah. Let's listen to Eve of Winter. This is Eve of Winter. Here we have Jessica Anastasia, our guest this time on Eclectrocasts. Jessica, one of the things that you had sent us to listen to was a piece that you had written, I believe, in college called The Factory, and it's a piece for percussion ensemble, and it's been performed. Can you tell us a little bit about how that came about?
Sure, absolutely. So this piece was actually an opportunity given to me by Dr. Frank Kumar of Kutztown University. He's the director of the percussion ensemble there, and overall, like, one of my favorite people. So the piece was performed twice. I didn't conduct it or anything, but I'm very much more of a behind the scenes person. But it was a lot of fun to write. I remember writing the majority of it. So I lived on campus, and I remember writing the majority of it in the laundry room in the basement.
Waiting for the dryer.
Exactly. Exactly.
That's interesting.
And, yeah. So I was just, I had my laptop down there. I had Finale open. Generally, I don't write music for people to perform. Mostly it's just for the playback. But this time it was very interesting to actually write for actual people to play. And I even left, I think it's 1 or 2 sections open for the percussionists to just have fun and do some improv. And overall, it was a very cool experience, especially hearing it out loud. And I'll always be grateful to Dr. Kumar for that.
That's such a stunning feeling when you hear something that you'd written that somebody else is playing and interpreting. Yeah. I remember, when I was in high school and when I was in college and all that kind of stuff, players in organized groups like concert bands and orchestras, they don't tend to like to improvise. They like the written page. And when you ask them to make up something, it's almost like, what do you mean? That's not how I play.
Yeah.
So how did they take to that?
So it was actually a very, very talented group of performers, and they just had a ball. They had fun with it. It was very cool to see, because I wasn't entirely sure if perhaps I should have maybe written a theme, like an underlying theme, and then they could perform on top of that. But yeah, they absolutely enjoyed it, and they did a very good job.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the recording that you sent us, that's a live performance, an actual live performance, right?
No, that one is actually just the finale performance of it.
Wow.
Yeah, I don't even think I have the actual performance, a recording of it.
It sounds so live. It sounds like it's in a space somewhere.
Yeah, that's just finale.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
That's really good.
We're gonna have to change that, Jessica. We're gonna have to all get together and play this piece.
Yeah.
And then you'll record it live.
There we go.
Yeah.
Yes.
And with lots of room for improvisation.
Yes, especially since I'm not very good at reading music.
Yeah. Most of the percussion is pitched, right? So
yes.
there are actual pitches that are being played.
Right.
Drums do have pitch. Non-melodic instruments do have pitches, but they're just harder to distinguish. A
good drummer will tune their set, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
It was also very cool because it was an opportunity for me to incorporate, I think it was just 2 themes from 2 of Danny Elfman's scores, such as Edward Scissorhands and the other one is Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. So it's also a fun little game to play. It's like try and find where the theme is from that soundtrack.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Frank Zappa used to do that a lot. Frank Zappa used to take little bits and pieces of other composers' stuff and throw them in somewhere. And you found he did that a lot live. So that's actually something it kind of goes with his conceptual continuity idea, which you actually probably embrace without even realizing in saying that most of your works are connected in some way.
Right.
Yeah. So let's listen to The Factory here. We have Jessica Anastasia, composer, artist, writer, with us here on Eclectrocast this time. This is a percussion piece that she composed a while back called The Factory.
Why is it called The Factory?
So it's called The Factory because it incorporates a lot of sounds that I believe sounded mechanical. And I generally, as you guys have probably noticed, I write pretty slow, kind of pretty sounds and songs. So this was one of the first pieces that I wrote, something that's more of a, quicker pace.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I really want to try, getting out of my comfort zone and try something that's a little bit more, fast.
So
basically.
Yeah.
So talking about, being out of your comfort zone, what are your plans for the future? Where are you going? What do you have in the cooker?
I don't really believe I can answer that without being brutally honest. I don't really know what the future holds for me. I find that I'm in the same boat as many people around my age who graduated college like half a decade ago, and we're not, working in our field, being crippled by lovely student loan debt, working jobs that we can't even afford to live on our own. So I'm not really sure. I have been grateful for the composition opportunities that have risen the past couple of years, from my reaching out to Professor Johnston, to, Jesse Crum with The Cycle. So I'm not really sure. I do hope to get a career started, whether it be in film scoring, digital marketing, writing novels, or nonprofit efforts with women empowerment or the LGBTQ community. So at the moment, at least my creative efforts are more of an on the side thing. But I would love for it to be, a full-time career. Absolutely.
So Jessica, your real name isn't Anastasia, right? That's your pen name, and obviously we keep referring to you as Jessica Anastasia. Fair enough. But what's behind that name? You use the X in there. Is that an X for unknown, like a almost like a mathematical unknown?
Here's Kees talking about variables again.
Yeah, variables. but
that's actually.
Yeah.
That's actually just when I was trying to pick a Twitter handle, Jessica Anastasia, I think was too long. So yes. So
or taken.
Or taken. I'm trying to remember. It was quite a while ago, but it was one of them.
Okay.
So I just decided to do like with the X's just because.
Yeah.
It was a good way to separate, the J from the Anastasia.
All right, good. So, I mean, what I was sort of getting at is you were adopted here in the United States. You were born in the Ukraine. How, this is obviously something that you deal with for the rest of your life to be an adopted child. How has that played into your artistry and your development of your own identity as a person?
Well, that's a very good question. I do feel that my work is very much related to my development and experiences as a person. Although my adoption is just part of who I am now, and I obviously don't mind sharing it. I think it's part of the first sentence on my website, maybe.
Right.
I do, I do wish it were easier for me when I was a child. I'm very happy that adoption does not have the same negative stigma around it as it used to.
Yeah.
But I would be absolutely lying if I said that it didn't negatively affect me growing up. But so Jessica Anastasia is actually, a pseudonym combining my American first name and the Ukrainian first name my birth mother wanted for me when she placed me in the orphanage. So the name is kind of honoring both of my parents.
Very nice.
Yeah, especially my American parents who are awesome, and I'm very grateful for their support and whatnot, and for adopting me.
How old were you? How old were you, Jessica, when you were adopted?
I believe either a little over 2 or like 2.5.
Okay, so you don't remember much of your life before?
I used to.
Okay, but you don't anymore. Okay.
Yeah, it was. It seems to have been a very depressing time for me, based on how I reacted, after I was adopted. And I'm sure, based on the rest of this interview, I'm also not a stranger to depression. And I wish the stigma around that would, that and the, medication for depression and whatnot, I wish it would go away.
Right.
I think a lot of my older work, as I said before, tends to be very dark, and a lot of that work focused on the ideas of, not feeling good enough, or, being unhappy, being uncertain of my future, all those fun little things that can really, gnaw on your mind. And I do think some of that is based on my origin, in the Ukraine, and, living in an orphanage for like 2 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That doesn't leave you unaltered, right? Those things are, even for very young children, are very, very, invasive experiences. I can't think of a much better word than that, but
yeah.
It makes me think about when you talked a little bit about Hillcrest Manor, this theme of orphanage comes back in there. So it obviously is something that you're still processing, right?
Right. I think I am at a certain point in my life where it's more of a positive, thing to look back on. At the time for Hillcrest Manor, I think it was, Hillcrest Manor was made up when I was going through like a very dark time in college. And some of those, issues with adoption and whatnot were prevalent at that time.
Yeah.
But yeah, so at least in my work, I try to somewhat incorporate some of that. And I also think that, the future readers, especially if they're adopted, they might be able to relate to that, like those feelings. And then, also in my story, I would like to show people how to, kind of like, get around those feelings, get help for those feelings and whatnot.
Jessica, it sounds to me like you need to adapt it for a children's book.
Maybe, although it's very gory.
Well, okay, no, but that's okay. You could, these are just suggestions. You don't you don't have to do anything, But think of it. You're an illustrator, right? You have a compelling storyline. You're making it for an adult, right? Can it be formatted or reformatted in some way for a child, for children who are adopted, right?
Right.
And maybe
Right.
particularly even adolescents, right? Because that's where this identity forming becomes a very difficult task for almost for almost anybody anyway. But to come with this additional struggle, I think I really like your idea, Jeff. I think it has a lot of potential.
That's a very good idea. Even if even if not Hillcrest Manor, something else, I think would be very beneficial.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah. So that sort of leads me to think a little bit about the track that we're going to ride out with. It's a short piece of it. It's called "Let Him In," and so when people struggle with their identity and with depression, they generally don't see themselves as attractive to others, or they may see that as a hindrance to be attractive to others. But that piece is about sort of attraction and the experience of love, isn't it?
Yes. I wrote that piece back in college, around the time that I was getting to know, my boyfriend at the time. And I think, once again, going back into the adoption aspect, it kind of tackles the feeling of, do I really want to get attached to this person, or is this person just going to be gone in, like a year or something?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I used to work in a children's home when I was in college, of abused children. And I also noticed, and they were adolescents, they were high school kids, and they were also having great difficulty believing that relationships could be lasting. And this is, of course, a hope that we're culturally raised with, right? That relationships, particularly romantic relationships, are supposed to last, right? Forever.
Right.
And that's something that I found those kids really, really struggled with. So if they would have a relationship, they would often have behaviors that would that would sort of destroy the relationships because they wouldn't believe it would last anyway. Mm-hmm.
Right.
So I'm not projecting that on you, but I'm sort of recognizing in what you say, this struggle and this hope that this is going to last forever, but not really believing that.
Right, exactly. And I think that's what that piece kind of encompasses, especially the
beautiful.
ending. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Beautiful. Beautiful. Well, we're going to ride out with that. I'm having just goosebumps talking to you. It's been just so amazing, Jessica. It's been absolutely stunning to have this time with you. Thank you so much.
Of course. And thank you both so much. Thank you.
Yeah, we're very happy to have finally got you in.
Yes, definitely.
So, after having listened to you for a while. So we have been speaking for the past hour with Jessica Anastasia here on Eclectrocasts. We're very happy that you spent your time with us today, Jessica. We're going to ride out on a piece called Let Him In. And thanks for listening, everybody. Goodbye, Jessica. Thanks for being here.
Bye, Jessica.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye, Kees. So we're going to ride out on Jessica's track, Let Him In.